Have you ever wondered what's really going on beneath the surface of your health? In this episode, we dive into how functional lab testing can uncover hidden stressors, optimize your metabolism, and help you feel your absolute best. You'll learn about the hidden approach, HIDDEN, to identifying root causes of health issues, the significance of eating according to your metabolic type, and actionable steps to improve your energy and overall well-being. By the end of this episode, you're going to have a clearer understanding of how to use functional lab testing to take control of your health. But before we dive in, if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify, make sure you hit that follow button. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit like and subscribe down below. Also, you can schedule a free 30-minute health consultation with me by going to nickcarrier.com and selecting a time that works best for you. I'll help you get a clear plan for how you can achieve your goals of losing body fat and or getting stronger. Book your call today by going to nickcarrier.com. All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Best You podcast. Today, I am really excited to be joined by Reed Davis. We're going to get into some functional lab testing conversations. We're going to get into probably some nutrition conversations and stuff like that. And Reed is one of the foremost people that you want to hear from when it comes to these kind of topics. So I'm really excited to dive in today. But Reed, the way that I want to start is that, you've worked with thousands and thousands of people to improve their health. And as somebody who's been in the space for a while, you know that there's a lot of different routes that somebody can take in order to help somebody else with their health. Obviously, there's fitness coaches, there's nutrition coaches, but you've kind of gotten to the point of doing functional lab testing. Why did you land on functional lab testing as the way that you wanted to serve the world with regards to improving their health? Like, was that the thing that you wanted to start when you started Functional Diagnostic Nutrition?
Well, it was what I was doing in the office that was working versus what wasn't working. And what wasn't working was people going and trying this and trying that and trying this and trying that, and maybe even being diagnosed by a physician with one particular item, one body part, and there's one fix for that. And so they were sick and tired, caught in the cycle of trial and error. And I was a nutritionist, and that wasn't working either, even with all the supplements and things like that. So I realized I had to go deeper and just think, God, Nick, I was in the right place at the right time to learn this lab work. There was a movement going on. This is 1999, 2000. 25 years ago, alternative medicine were the pioneers, the original OGs, for this kind of lab work where you're not diagnosing and treating a specific thing. You're looking for underlying causes and conditions. And I was just really fortunate. And I took advantage of that good fortune by working really, really hard. Like you mentioned, I ran over 10,000 labs in 10 years on people coming in the office face to face. And they had been trying their nutrition. I was just another nutritionist, just another one in a row, until I started running the lab work, which would direct not only nutrition and supplements, but all the other lifestyle habits that they needed to adopt, or change.
Gotcha. So you said that this was the stuff that was actually working and you were in the right place at the right time to kind of learn about the functional labs. What are functional labs? Like, if somebody gets a functional lab test, what are the different things that you actually get back from that?
Well, you get data, whether it be on the hormones or the immune system or digestion or detoxification. How are things really working? So most people who came in our office had already been to a practitioner or 10, and they'd had standard blood work. Matter of fact, I think your audience will identify with this. Many had been told nothing's wrong with you. Your blood work looks normal. So those tests were kind of useless. And people wanted to try something else. And I would say, well, hey, let me run a few labs of these functional labs. We didn't even call them that then. They were just alternative. Alternative medicine evolved to complementary, and that turned into integrative, and that now finally we have functional medicine, which I think still needs to evolve further. What it will eventually evolve into is what we do. Strictly 100%. No diagnosing and treating of a specific thing permitted. A lot of us aren't even doctors, so you're not allowed to diagnose. But you can find out what's above that, what's way upstream sometimes. Again, within the hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system balance. So that's an acronym, by the way, hidden.
Yeah, actually, let's run through that again real quick.
So over the years, remember, I spent 10 years there and initially having a lot to learn. Good news is I had nothing to unlearn because I had come from a different field, environmental law. But I just started running labs and like these mostly women come in the office. Well, obviously in their age group, they had hormone issues and we'd work on that. And I realized, well, that's not totally getting them better. That's not 100% of what they would, maybe some symptoms would go away, but then they'd have others. So the immune system, digestion, not necessarily in this order, by the way, because but this is how the dominoes fall in the lab work. HIDDEN, hormones, immune system, because if you're under stress, your catabolic anabolic goes out of balance. Then the sex hormones go, which there's a lot of complaints around that, and because a lot of people don't even know how stressed they are. But that's the root of all evil, so to speak. Sex hormones go. The next domino to fall is, well, your immune system starts to get weak. Then you get a dysbiosis and digestive trouble. And that just downward spirals from there. So the HIDDEN took me almost 10 years to figure out. And as a system of always looking for the underlying cause or condition, never trying to just diagnose and treat one thing. People had enough of that.
Yeah.
And today, again, thank goodness we have functional medicine, but the doctors practicing it are still bound by diagnosis and treatment model. They have no choice. That's their standard of care. That's their licensure. That's what they were trained on. So we just have a much broader view of what's really going on with each individual person.
And what's the E and the N?
The E and N is energy production on a cellular level. So we check for two things, oxidative stress, because cells get stressed out, and it's really easy to measure how well those things are functioning, mitochondrial function and things like that. But then the other thing, and by the way, you can control most of that with the proper macronutrient ratios, protein, fat, and carbs. Believe it or not, that's often the answer. But then nervous system, the N is nervous system balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic. And there was chiropractors where I worked, and they were like experts in that and taught me so much about the two different branches and, the sort of fight flight, which people are in and don't even know it. And then there's the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, we call it. And I lean more that way. Some people actually have a dominance, and you probably know your A-type personality. They're sympathetic. It's always
Yeah.
I could give you some examples, but the totally opposite, laid back, just take everything in stride, and you can go overboard that way too. You end up.
Of course. Well, no, I love this hidden approach. We're going to dive deeper into this, but just to recap it for everybody listening, hidden is an acronym: hormones, immune system, digestion, dysbiosis, energy production, and nervous system. And so basically you created this approach as these are like the underlying things to look at that could be causing you issues.
In every person. Yeah, the second D is digestion, which dysbiosis is one of the ways we measure digestion, because if you don't have the right floral balance in the gut, you can't break down protein. You'll end up with neurotransmitter issues and lots of issues around assimilation, like nutrients, those are pretty important. But yeah, so HIDDEN, hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. There's other things you can measure, Nick, but those were what I found firsthand, totally practical experience and training, were bothering our clients, which was
Right.
mostly women, but when we had success, they brought us kids, they brought us their husbands, and so it's the same for everybody. Stress and downward spirals.
And so and somebody is coming to you guys for functional lab testing, is that one test that they get all of like the results for all of those things?
When you include the food sensitivity testing, there'd be 5 labs we run on every person. That's the system, because otherwise you're left with what does this sound like? Can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, you wake up too early. You would call it insomnia, but what is it really? What's going on with the hormones and all these things? So we're always looking for the underlying causes and conditions upstream. And this is what I found out. There's always multiple causal factors in every chronic downward spiraling stress-related condition. There's always multiple factors. And here's something, Nick, you probably won't hear much talk about. Those causal factors are having an effect on each other. And that's not even singly measurable in many cases. And that's coming from a guy like what I do now is I just teach lab work and natural protocols. So the HIDDEN became the investigative methodology and system. You just look, you can identify this constellation of healing opportunities. The causal factors mostly are healing opportunities. Oh, here's what's really wrong, Mrs. Smith. And you work on all of it at the same time with a holistic lifestyle protocol, DRESS, which is the other half of what we do.
Yeah, I love it. No, I love it. I think that's one of the things that is a flaw in traditional medicine, if you will, is that we look at one thing at a time and try to treat that one thing, but the body is an integrative system and other things can impact each other.
And people suffer so much because of it. They'll go to a gastroenterologist because they have quote unquote gut problems, and they might even be getting some progress on that and say to the doctor, oh, my sex drive, I can't build muscles, I got oh, well, that's an endocrinology problem. Go see an endocrinologist. So they're getting bumped around, and it, insurance starts to play a factor, and it's really kind of a mess.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, you mentioned it really quickly there, the way that you go about helping people improve their lifestyle, or the framework that you guys kind of use is DRESS, DRESS, which is diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. I want to start off with the diet one because you kind of mentioned it when it comes to oxidative stress. You said that it's easy to measure mitochondrial function. So I want you to start off by telling us what when you get your lab testing done, what are you looking at to determine your mitochondrial function? Let's start there.
Well, it's not an easy thing to measure. So guess what? There is something really easy. Like again, oxidative stress is really important. So because we can measure it within the cells, so you're getting, what's affecting the mitochondria. And the higher the stress levels, oxidative stress, that's your body basically rusting. We're exposed, it's oxygen, it has an effect. It's good in one hand, but bad if it's too much. And so we look at this breakdown, but also the way people feel and act. I could give your audience right now a very simple explanation. Let's just take for this energy production, you burn fuel. You're going to burn carbs, fats, and proteins, right? And there's different cycles and ways. It's very scientific. By the way, in our course, we teach all the anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry involved. But very simply, if you eat protein, fat, and carb in the right ratio, fuel mixture, in other words, for your metabolic type, your metabolism, your genetic inherited, 500 generation old or 5,000 generations, take your pick, old genetics, you require this specific formula, fuel formula, the right percentage of protein, fat, and carbs. Because you hear people talk about, oh, I'm paleo, or I'm you say even more than that. You have your people who only eat meat, you're carnivores. Well, that might be good for one genetic type because that's what your 500 generation ago ancestors ate. Mostly they were hunter-gatherers, they ate meat. but everyone from all over the world had slightly different ratios, and also, by the way, slightly different ratios of the micronutrients, the vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, and trace elements and things like that, phytonutrients. So that's genetic. And if you match it, you'll have high energy, you'll have a good sense of well-being, you actually feel better. You actually feel, hey, improved. You're not irritable and you're not craving things. And then finally, you satiate yourself completely. You're satisfied. And if you're not eating that way, you're going to be craving and irritable and fatigued and all this stuff. So the fuel mixture, but to diet, to the point that you asked about the DRESS, diet is like so controllable. It's one of the things we can actually fix like real fast.
Yeah. So how do you actually match up what your proper metabolic type is? How do you match up what the ratio is appropriate for you based off of your testing?
Yeah, we have the metabolic typing test, and it asks you questions about your genetics, your personal habits, about food, and this requires some thought to do completely, and physical characteristics. We can pretty much tell you where to start, and roughly it's protein type, mixed type, carb type, and there are people throughout the world. There's the Quechuan Indians in South America. They don't eat a lot of meat. You know what? They eat a lot of potatoes, right? And they have 400 different varieties, and they use them as medicine and all this stuff. They're very easily adaptable to. Then you have the Eskimos who are eating fat. And then you have the Europeans who eat a lot of more your red meats and things. You have your Native Americans, and these genetic diets are not that hard to figure out. And so you get a starting point, and then you'll use what I just told you: sense of satiation, your sense of energy, and your sense of well-being. The mood as your indicator. And you add a little bit more fat and protein, or back it off, eat a little more vegetables and things. All of this assumes you're eating high quality, clean, food, as organic as possible, as naturally raised, and blah, blah, all that stuff. But yeah, you can really dial it in. We call it the diet check record sheet.
Yeah.
So we have you start here, and you list for us, as health coaches, what do you have for breakfast? How do you feel afterwards, 2 hours later? Did you have enough energy to get through to lunch, your next fueling stop, if you will? So we could spend a whole show just on the D diet, but it's really my approach to everything is to use the data to dictate and guide, and then your own personal journey, if you will.
Yeah. How important have you found it being to match your metabolic type versus just eating balanced in general? Like versus somebody who's just eating poorly. Like, maybe to get to baseline, they just need to have a regularly balanced protein, carbs, and fats. And then maybe it's optimal to find to match your metabolic type, if you will. Like, I don't know if that question makes sense. Like,
let me throw it back at you and go, how important do you think it is to eat so that you're fueled properly? Because cells, when you look at it this way, cells don't need to be taught what their job is.
Yeah.
It's an inherent, innate intelligence within the cell, within the tissue, within the organ and system, organism. It's all innate intelligence. So if you fuel it properly and those cells are doing their job to their very best of their ability, don't you think they know what kind of tissue they're in and what tissue what organ or whatever it is? So all those things are on autopilot. We don't have to worry about them. We just have to fuel them properly. While obviously, Nick, you remove obstacles to proper function and things. All the toxins and chemicals and stuff. Remember, I started in environmental law. That was my original training before, I started worrying about people more than fish and birds. You see enough dead fish and birds while you're saving the planet, and you go, what about people? That's what got me to switch my careers.
I love it.
Plus, there was funny business going on in that area, but not in this area, not in the same way. Sure, we're up against people, number one, not taking responsibility. They just want the doctor to fix them and give them some pills, and those don't make good customers for us. We want people who want to know, if you're inquisitive, you're like, I want to know what's really wrong with me, not just that my doctor says I'm hypothyroid. Well, why am I hypothyroid? And in traditional medicine, it doesn't ask why. It goes, here's the prescription, go get it filled and come back in 3 months. And we'll check the paper. They're treating the test results in our view, not the person. It's
Right.
very interesting. It's fascinating, and it's such a wonderful field.
So when people start to eat the proper macronutrient ratio based off of their metabolic type, that means they will reduce their oxidative stress, which means their mitochondria are going to be functioning more optimally, which means they're going to be improving their energy levels. Their metabolic rate's going to be increased and faster, potentially giving them the ability to maybe hit body composition goals and stuff like that. Are those kind of some of the main benefits?
Well, that's what you said. Potential's everything, but what's the real potential? To be the best that your genetics will allow you to be. Genetics are about 8 or 9% of your total health. The rest is epigenetics. But you want to live to your fullest genetic potential. So that's the goal. That's to live as long as you can, as healthy as you can. My genetics happen to be pretty good in terms of longevity. My mom's 94. She has aunties that were 99 and 100. So that's pretty good genetic potential from that point of view. Now, my genetic potential to play National Basketball League is very like nil. This is zero potential for that. At 5'10", I'm just never going to play that kind of ball. But my genetic potential, I want to have it expressed in a natural, free-flowing. Freedom's everything, and be the best that you could be. It sounds kind of trite or contrite, but that's where peak performance comes in. For a fitness guy like you, we take a lot of people who are unwell and make them well, right? Get over that and start living right. You live yourself out of what you've lived yourself into in terms of chronic stress related downward spirals. But what about the person's in pretty good shape? They eat well and they exercise and they feel okay and stuff. What about the maximum potential for that person? No, it's actually almost harder to do than well to unwell. No, I mean unwell to well, and then well to super well. How do you do that? And you know, it's the same thing. It's the same principles involved, but it's a lot more attention on fine tuning.
No doubt about it. And because a lot of people aren't doing that sometimes because oftentimes pain is the biggest motivator. And if they're in a place where they're doing pretty good, they're not experiencing that much pain or that much frustration. And so that maybe holds them back from taking it to the next level of going from good to great or from good to optimal. The way I want to kind of transition, or actually I want to stay on this one more question, the macronutrient ratio. Obviously, like you said, it's very personal to your genetics, maybe where your ancestors came from and stuff like that. Have you found a most common ballpark macronutrient ratio for like most of the clientele that you guys have worked with, the thousands of customers that you worked with, like a one that is pretty good for most people, or at least a lot of people?
If someone shows up as a slow oxidizer, so this burning of fuel, we call it oxidation. And again, the anatomy, physiology, the biochemistry is fairly complex, Krebs cycle and all that stuff, right? But it's just protein, fat, and carb ratio. You burn this stuff and you produce energy on a cellular level. And then the cell can do its job to the degree that you match those things. And while you remove any toxins and stress and different things, that's why stress reduction, huge part of what we do. We sort that out. We run a lot of labs. But so if you have that and you're producing that energy on a cellular level and the cells acting well, you still need the micronutrients. So I can't make it as simple as, oh yeah, we find most people are fast oxidizers, which means that they eat more protein and fat because those burn slowly. So a fast oxidizer needs slow burning fuel. So that makes sense. Like a bonfire, if you just put carbs on it, which would be like paper, you go through that so quickly that you're left craving and tired and fatigued and all kinds of bad problems happen to the way you feel. But on a cellular level, it's worse than that because cells are going to degenerate and you start all these downward spirals. But it's the micronutrients, which are also equally dictated by genetics. So again, if you came from the steppes of, Mongolia, there was certain amounts of all the vitamins, minerals, trace elements, all the metals and all the different things in good amount. They got into the food, and you ate into the plants, and you ate the plants, or you ate the animals that ate the plants, or you ate the animals that ate the animals that ate the plants. So that genetic makeup of those ratios and things in the micronutrients, again, vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, trace elements, phytonutrients, all the things, amino acids, all the things are dictated by nature. And that would be totally different if you're from Borneo and you grew up on, bananas and, papaya and some fish. That would be different. It's a different part of the world, and that's just how it works. That's just the laws of nature. We're not doing anything contrary to that. We're trying to find where is that. So again, there's testing we do,
Right.
and some of it's actually just really interviewing really well. Like there's questionnaires that would help us determine oxidative rate, and then I could throw another layer on it, that nervous system balance, because you can screw that up. If you're take the a real A-type personality, like wah, 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 everything's just always, you're always in trouble or something. I don't know what that's like because I'm so parasympathetic, but would you want to eat foods that stimulate your that sympathetic nervous system? No. You'd want to eat the opposite. You want to stimulate the weak side. And it's the same for parasympathetics. If I eat the wrong things, then, I get out of balance. And so
food really plays a big impact with regards to how it interacts with your nervous system too.
of all the things we can control, it's way up there in terms of the amount of an effect that it has. It's
Wow.
really, and especially with kids. Listen, I had a kid, he was the kid of a patient in our clinic 20 years ago, taught me so much. His school wanted to send him home if he didn't get on drugs. The mom said, they want to send my kid home if I don't put him on drugs. I'm like, who, a doctor? No, the teacher and principal. I said, well, that's not right. But, and by the way, the kid's 9. They wanted to put him on, back then it was Ritalin, which is a class 2 narcotic, the same class as cocaine in terms of drugs. And I said, well, do you want to do that? No. Well, I don't know if I can help or not, but let's run some tests and see. Change the kid's diet. Change his bedtime, the diet, rest. Change his exercise routines. Actually, tripled his exercise. So diet, rest, exercise. And forget stress reduction and supplements. See, we didn't even talk about it. It was just the first part of DRESS. And within 3 weeks of getting the labs back and explaining what to do and things like that to the mom, I actually never met the 9-year-old. I'll do it through the mom, and that's beautiful. Kids respond so quickly to diet and rest and exercise and things. The principal tracked me down, Nick, and said, hey, Mr. Davis, this is a different kid. He's paying attention. He's not poking the other kids. He's not shouting out in class. And what the hell did you put him on? Which I said, well, I put him on a different diet, bedtime, and exercise schedule. He wanted to know what was in the bottle or jar, which kind of pissed me off, but that's okay. We did good for the kid and a lot of other kids.
Well, let's go further into this, because I'm sure there's going to be parents listening who maybe have kids who are all over the place and maybe very sympathetic from a nervous system standpoint naturally. What are like specific foods that help you get into more of a parasympathetic state or more of a relaxed state?
Changing the macronutrient ratios really helps a lot. And what's really weird, if you think about it, is what if one kid is all hyper and excitability and the other one's a couch potato?
Yeah.
So how do you cook for that meal? So that's a lot of what our training and coaching does. How to make a meal, and you letting the kid eat what is best for their type off the same plate. So it's not maybe one specific. You can make a meal for the family, but the parasympathetic's going to eat more. He's going to like that meat and fat a lot more than the other one, who's might like just the vegetables and fruits and things like that. And it's always a combination. And it's always you do something and then you observe the outcomes. And so we talk about building health a lot like sailing a boat. I don't know if you've sailed before, but you zigzag. You can't sail, oh, I'm going straight across. No, you're going to go with the wind and the currents and the waves slapping up against the bow and the size of your hull and your keel and your sails and things. You're going to have to tack and come about and things like that. So it's kind of zigzag. There's no power health. There's no power boating to health. You've got to be able to do something consistently, observe the changes, and then kind of adjust accordingly. Everyone's on their own journey. And with the guidance and lab work, we found, well, here's really good places to start and what needs repairing, rebuilding, restoring, or rebalancing, or whatever it is. So it's a great system.
Yeah. So I want to see if I got this right. You had mentioned, and I know I know that we don't want to put blanket approaches on anything like that, but you mentioned if somebody is maybe more sympathetic and more in that fight and flight more regularly, that's their natural personality, then eating more maybe like carbs, like veggies and fruits are going to be potentially better at getting them into a parasympathetic state. And then somebody who is naturally more parasympathetic, naturally more in that rest and digest, maybe more heavy on protein and fats would help to balance things out appropriately. Is that, again, we're not a blanket approach, but is that a roughly accurate?
There's some twist to it, but because there's both the sympathetic versus parasympathetic, that autonomic dominance, and the oxidative rate, slow, fast, or somewhere in between. And so if you're lucky enough to be both parasympathetic and fast oxidizer, the answer to your question is yes.
Gotcha.
But you might have to vary it more variety and experiment a little bit more if you're a fast oxidizer but sympathetic dominant. So there's what we call the classic types, sympathetic and slow oxidizer. You take these people from the jungle whose tribes for 10,000 years have been warriors, and they're very sympathetic. Everything will kill you in the jungle. It's all, there's the animals and things that will eat you, and then there's the warring tribe next door and all these different things. So you just kind of envision sympathetic dominant, warrior tribes, right? And because you can't see very far, the jungle's blocking your view. And then you take your classic fast oxidizer parasympathetics like the Eskimos who can see for 1,000 miles in all directions. Nothing's going to sneak up on them. They just fish and hunt and eat and procreate all day, right? So and they build things, but they're very industrious. They're very hard. So you can study it from, and that's a very broad and some might say biased opinion, but I've seen it in action. My brother, my cousin, was a priest up in Canada, and he had 2 Cree Indian villages as his parish. And man, we studied their diet and stuff and why they're all sick. Why are they all sick? Because they're fast oxidizer parasympathetics eating opposite. They're eating government food, and the mining camps would come into these areas and with junk, and they would eat the junk instead of eating fish and caribou, and so they all got sick. They're all in the dole with diabetes, going to government clinics, taking their medicine, and they're very unhappy. They have the highest suicide rate of any indigenous population. Why? Because they're really unhappy. And the alcoholism is huge. Why? Because they don't eat the way they're supposed to eat. Yeah, I know that's breaking it down in a real simple way, but I've seen that. I'm my own cousin, and we studied his Cree Indian. They're like almost Eskimos. They're way up. And they were known when the early settlers came over, having the most energy of anyone. They could run over rocks across the lake all day and go kill a caribou and come back with it on their back, and were very robust people. Now they're all on government assistance.
Yeah.
I'm speaking very broadly and very biased in a very biased way, and I apologize for that. But I'm just trying to illustrate a point.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think I have definitely, my biggest takeaway from today is the importance on kind of like knowing your metabolic type, knowing your oxidative rate, knowing your autonomic dominance. I think that's so key, and it's things that I've never taken in account before myself. So that's super great. So I hope you guys have learned a lot today. This hidden approach of hormones, immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system is such a great framework to kind of go about looking at your current state of health and what might be causing certain issues. And we really only were able to dive into the energy production and nervous system today, but you can dive much further if you get some of this testing done yourself. But then I also want to readdress the DRESS approach of diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. These are some of the areas in which you can start to improve your habits and match your habits more with your genetics and stuff like that in order to improve these different areas of health. If somebody is interested in getting functional lab testing done with you guys so that they can do some of the things that we've talked about today, where would they go to get some of this functional lab testing done?
Yeah, thank you for that. First of all, I wanted to say there's some books that would really help people out, because trying to do things to just point you in the right direction. The Metabolic Typing Diet is really a good book by William Wolcott, who's a good friend of mine. And then there's mtdiet.com. But for more information on the lab testing and training on that kind of a thing, go to fdntraining.com/carrier. In your honor, sir, fdntraining.com/carrier.
Perfect. Awesome. I am excited to read that book myself and maybe get some of this testing done. This has been great. You guys need to make sure you go there. You can also go to their Instagram page, FDN Training. He also has a book called The Gap that you could check out. But other than that, this has been absolutely great today, Reed. I feel like I've learned a ton. This hidden approach, this framework, and the DRESS approach to improving the hormones, immune system, etc., has been a really great way to go about it. And I've really started to believe in the importance of understanding what your metabolic type is based off of your genetics and stuff like that, and matching that to your macronutrient ratio and figuring out what your oxidative rate is. That can really help not just improve your health, but optimize your health. So I really appreciate today. You guys make sure you go to mtdiet.com, go to fdntraining.com/carrier as well. fdntraining.com/carrier. We'll have that linked up in the show notes. But other than that, that's all we got today, Reed. Really appreciate it.
Good, brother.
Alrighty.
Wow. That episode with Reed was packed with actionable insights of things that I hadn't even heard before about uncovering the root causes of health challenges and optimizing your metabolism through functional lab testing. His hidden approach and focus on metabolic typing provided practical steps to help you take control of your health and feel your best. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow the Best You podcast on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, again, don't forget to hit like and subscribe down below. And remember, you can book a free 30-minute health consultation with me today at a day and time that works best for you by going to nickcarrier.com. We're going to get a clear plan together so that you can undoubtedly get closer to achieving your goals, and not only achieve them, but surpass them. So go to nickcarrier.com to book your call today. My 3 biggest takeaways from the episode are the following. Number 1 is identifying and addressing hidden stressors through lab testing can be a huge key to optimizing your health and avoiding guesswork. Number 2 is eating according to your metabolic type can make a profound impact on your energy levels and overall well-being. And third and finally is understanding your oxidative rate, meaning whether or not you burn carbs better or fats better, and also learning how your nervous system responds. Are you more of a parasympathetic and naturally? Are you more your sympathetic state naturally? Knowing how your nervous system responds to different foods can help you make smarter nutritional decisions. If you can do some of these things, you're going to continue to get closer to the healthiest version of yourself, and ultimately, and most importantly, you'll continue to get closer and closer to your best